Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your literacy lesson. Today, we're going to be writing the next paragraph in our Edward Tulane chapter. So I'm going to share my screen and we're going to jump into that. So for today's warm-up, to get our brain into it, I would like you to come up with synonyms for these words. Just noticed for some reason it started at number 2. Oh, what's going on? Thank you. There we go. So, can you think of other words, stronger words for these words? So walked, what could I say instead of walked? He charged, he stormed. What else? What about opened? Instead of he opened the cupboard, he the cupboard. What did he do? And for cry, now I don't mean like cry like you're sad, I mean cry out like you're in pain. What other words could we use to describe that, to make it a bit stronger? Okay, so pause the video now, have a go at writing out some synonyms that you are more powerful, and then come back and press play once you finish that. Okay, now that you've had a go, I'm just going to put up some examples on the board. If you didn't get them, that's absolutely fine. I'm just going to type these on in for speed. So instead of walked, we could use he stormed in, he stomped, he strode, like it's like power, he had purpose. What else? He oh, I've just gone a bit blank there. Stormed, stomped, strode. He marched in. Okay, right. What could we do for open? Instead of opened, we could say he yanked. He thrust the door opened. He pulled, but it's probably not a super strong word compared to the other ones. Okay, and what could we do for cried? You could say he yelped, whimpered. We could have he whined in pain. It's not as strong, but it's another word that we could use to is a bit stronger than cried. Howled in pain. Okay, so there's loads of different words we could use. So today we're going to be focusing on our vocabulary for effect. What vocabulary we can use to make our writing more interesting using powerful verbs and adjectives. Okay, so to start us off before we write, just remind yourself, what is the purpose of a fiction text? Okay, so on the count of 3, can you shout it out? The purpose of a fiction text is 1, 2, 3. To entertain. And who is our audience? 1, 2, 3. Children. Excellent. So today we are writing our 4th paragraph of our chapter, and we're going to be describing that problem that we alluded to yesterday. So can you remember what actually happened when the man found Edward and Lucy and Bull on the train? What did he do? Have a think. You can pause the video if you need a little bit of time to think about it. Okay, so hopefully you can remember, but he storms into the train and he's furious that Bull and Lucy and Edward are asleep there. And he thinks, he says, why are you bums, he calls them, which is like a derogatory term for somebody who is homeless. Why are you bums always trying to nick a lift on my trains? I'm not having it. He kicks Lucy in anger, and he's trying to kick Bull and Lucy off the train. All right, so today we're going to be writing that. Now, don't get confused. We are not going to write that Edward is going to leave Bull or Lucy. He's not going to get chucked out of the train today. That's tomorrow. Today, we're just introducing this angry man, this angry train conductor who wants to get Lucy and Bull off his train. So having a look at the original text, where Lolly had just come home and said, wow, where Edward has enjoyed his life with Nellie and Lawrence, and Lolly has just arrived home. So here we go, finding out about Lolly, the problem. Lolly paraded into the house and immediately spotted Edward sitting at the table. She was a lumpy woman who was very loud and wore too much pink lipstick. What is this stupid thing? She said, picking up Edward. Why have you got a toy sitting at the table? Looking unimpressed, she gave Edward a shake and tossed him onto the couch so that he landed face down. He felt a sharp pain in his chest. Nellie would never dream of treating him that way. So have a look at the words in purple. We've got paraded and tossed. what is the effect of using those words? You can pause the video if you need a bit of time to think, but say it out loud. What's the point? Or discuss with somebody if they're nearby. What is the point of using those words? Okay, well, those words are more powerful and it really gives me a sense of what is happening. I can picture it. Lolly didn't walk into Ash, she paraded like she was the most important person in the world. She didn't just put him onto the couch, because put might be gently or on purpose or intentionally. She tossed him like you would a piece of trash. Tossed him like she doesn't care. So those words really change the meaning or the action that I'm picturing. So we're going to be using those powerful words to really paint a picture in our reader's mind today. So the order of our paragraph is going to be the new person enters. We're going to describe this train conductor and what he looks like. Then we're going to talk about what do they say. And third, we're going to do how do they react. And the final sentence of today's paragraph is going to be how does Edward feel about everything that is happening. All right, so let's jump straight into it. Your turn, my turn. So the first part of the paragraph will be describing this new person. So in the original paragraph, it says Lolly paraded into the house and immediately spotted Edward sitting at the table. She was a lumpy woman, which tells me she was a bit overweight. She was very loud and she wore too much pink lipstick. So I've got like this picture in my mind of an overweight woman who's got a really irritating voice and maybe not the most attractive because she's having to use like bold lipstick to look pretty. So maybe we could use these words here on the board. We got bounded, hurtled, stomped, marched, stamped, or slammed. So we could say all of a sudden a door slammed open. Not just the door opened, it slammed open. Okay. In marched a very visibly angry man. Okay. So my turn first. I'm going to switch on over to mine. Okay, I've got yesterday's paragraph here. So first, I'm just going to write the date so that I know it is a new paragraph. I know where the end was. So we've got it is Wednesday, the 3rd of February. Miss Boots's favourite month since it is my birthday. This month, 2021. I'm going to underline my date for beautiful presentation, as should you. And I'm going to jump straight into writing it. So the last sentence I wrote was until the night they were discovered on a train. It's important to reread your work so that your work flows, because although we're separating these by a date, they're following on. They should all be part of the same chapter. So it says until the night they were discovered on a train. I'm going to start with a man with a torch. So I got a picture that it's at night time with a torch. And how could I describe him walking onto the train? He stormed onto the train. Stormed into the freight car. Remembering that's where they are. Freight car. If you haven't written about him being on the train, you must make sure that you are very clear that Bull and Lucy and Edward are asleep on a train. A man with a torch stormed into the freight car and kicked, because he's obviously quite rude, kicked Bull to wake him. So I first described him entering. Now I'm going to describe what he looks like so the reader knows, they can picture it in their mind. Okay, so I'm going to say he was, you can think to yourself, was he tall, was he short, was he overweight? Maybe if, try not to just use fat. If you're going to do something like that, use like plump, or he had a wide girth. Okay, so I'm going to say he was a large man, comma, dressed in black, to describe what he looks like, in black, and wearing a cowboy hat. Lovely. Okay, so I've described how he's entered and what he looked like. Now, please be a little sensible with what he looks like. The last thing we need is your reader being confused that he's wearing a fireman's outfit for some reason. Okay, make it make sense. It's important that the reader enjoys the book and isn't sitting there thinking, well, why is that in there? That makes no sense. Okay, so I have had them enter and I have described what this man looks like. So it is your turn. I'm going to pop it back on this screen. I'd like you to pause the video. I would like you to write maybe 1-2 sentences where our new man enters and describe what he looks like. So pause the video, do that, and then come back for our next sentence. Okay, now that you've done that, we're going to go into what do they say. Now, in the original text, Lolly says, "What is this stupid thing?" she said, picking up Edward. "Why have you got a toy sitting at the table?" Now, remembering back to our speech lesson from last week, speech should do 2 things. It should either move the story forward or it should give me clues as to what the characters are thinking. So what does the speech in this section do? Does it move the story forward or does it give me clues as to what she's thinking? Well, it doesn't really move the story forward, but it does give me an idea about how Lolly feels about Edward. She calls him a stupid thing, and she questions, why is he part of the family? Why is he sitting at the table? Okay, so we want our speech to do kind of the same thing. It needs to give us an idea about how this man is feeling or what he thinks about Bull and Lucy. So maybe he could say something about, "Oi, tramp, get off my train." And when it's speech like this, we can use a little bit more informal language. In the rest of the text, we can't. We want to use formal language. However, when it's somebody speaking, they can use informal language because it might just be how they speak. He might say, "What do you think you're doing?" Or, "I'm tired of you good-for-nothing bums hitching a lift on my train." All right, so it shows me that aggressive manner that he doesn't like finding these men and their dogs sleeping on his trains. So I'm going to switch on over to my visualizer and you can watch as I do mine. Okay, so I'm going to start with him saying something. He's going to insult him. So I start with my speech marks to open up the speech and I need a capital letter. "You bum." Oh, bum. And then I'm going to put a comma and close my speech marks. It's not going to be the end of my speech. I'm going to separate my speech with how he said it. "You bum," he shouted. And then I'm going to continue this speech like he's still talking. So it's not the end of the sentence, so I need a comma. New speech marks because he's going to continue shouting. "You bum," he shouted. "I'm sick. I'm sick of you guys sleeping on my trains." And I'm going to have an exclamation mark to finish because it's obviously quite aggressive. Speech marks to close, okay? Now, notice he calls him a bum. And I did say earlier, this is not to be funny. It's an actual insult for somebody who is homeless. That's what you would call them, okay? So it wouldn't make sense if he said, "You bottom," okay? Because that's not an actual insult for somebody who's homeless. Okay, so try to make it, if you're going to insult him, make it an appropriate insult. Don't just try to be funny. That's actually not what the writer was doing here. I'm not trying to make you laugh by saying the word bum. No, I'm actually using an insult for somebody who is homeless. It's quite a derogatory term. That means to be rude to somebody, an insulting word for somebody there. Okay, so you don't have to use an insult. Maybe you can use like these ones here. So, "Oi, tramp." Tramp is an insult as well. So, "You tramp," he shouted. "I'm sick of you guys sleeping on my trains." That would be fine as well. So I'd like you to pause the video now and write a sentence including speech. Don't forget all the speech punctuation that you need. Speech marks, capital letter, speech, punctuation and speech marks to close, and a reporting clause to say how he said it. Okay, so pause the video now, go away and do that, come back and press play once you're finished. All right, so going on to our next part, all right? How does the man react? So he's shouted, he's angry. Now we're going to say what he does. So looking at the original text, Lolly, looking unimpressed, she gave Edward a shake and tossed him onto the couch so that he landed face down, all right? So again, using those strong words, tossed, okay? What is the man going to do? Is he going to kick Lucy? Is he going to rip Bull's hat off or blanket off his body, okay? He's not doing anything to Edward yet. That's tomorrow, in tomorrow's paragraph when he spots Edward. Today it's how is he treating Lucy and Bull, okay? So we could maybe start with filling with fury. He ripped Bull's blanket off him. Angry that they didn't move, he kicked his foot out into Lucy's side. Outraged or turning as red as a tomato or irritated and angry, okay? So using that front of that verbial to add the information about how this man is feeling. All right, my turn. I've run out of space on this page, so I'm going to turn my book over and shift this across just a little bit. Okay. All right, so I forgot to take off. What do they say? Done. Now we're going to do how do they react. So what is this man going to do? So maybe I might say turning red with rage, turning red with rage, he, sorry, I don't have to say the man, now I could just say he kicked, but I'm going to say he thrust, strong word, he thrust his boot into Lucy's side, so hard that it made her, and I could make her say cry, but just like we practiced at the start of the lesson, maybe I could say that made her whimper, that it made her yelp, okay? So a stronger word, that it made her yelp. Okay, so one sentence to describe an action that he does. All right, so I'm going to pop this screen back on and you can pause the video here. I can now tick off how do they react. So pause the video, write that sentence. Once you've done that, come back and press play. Okay, welcome back for our last sentence. We're going to describe how does Edward feel. Okay, so what's he thinking? So in the original text, Edward felt a sharp pain in his chest. Nellie would never dream of treating him that way. So maybe we could have something like Edward wished he could do something. Why was he made of china? Edward hated being made of china. He just wanted to help. Edward wanted to do something, and then that nice short, sharp sentence, but he couldn't. All right, so I'm going to come across and write mine. Okay, so let me just shift this up and across. So maybe I could have something like Edward wished he could move, okay, full stop, short sentences to show the drama and the tension. All he wanted to do was help. All right, so short, sharp sentences to finish. So I'm going to leave this screen here. I'd like you to pause the video, write that sentence or two sentences, come back and press play for our final part of our lesson. Okay, welcome back. I'm going to tick off that one. So coming back now, before we finish for the day, we're going to go through our paragraph and edit it for any errors. So going back to the start, I'm going to reread the whole paragraph, looking for any errors, things that I could fix up. And I'd like you, can you spot the errors in my writing before I do? All right, so a man with a torch stormed into the freight car and kicked Bull to wake him. He was a large man dressed in black and wearing a cowboy hat. "You bum," he shouted. I'm sick of you guys sleeping on my trains. I've not seen any errors as yet, great, but I do think it doesn't really always make for interesting reading. So maybe I could add in some noun phrases to make it more interesting. So maybe just instead of kicked, I could say how he kicked him, maybe aggressively. Aggressively kicked ball to wake him. He was I could change large instead of large, because large is a bit simple. Maybe I could say portly, plump. He was a portly man, dressed in black and wearing a cowboy hat. And again, I could maybe say a brown cowboy hat, a red cowboy hat. It's up to me. You bum, he shouted. I'm sick of you guys sleeping on my trains. Right, I'm happy with that. I'm going to turn it over, read the last bit of my paragraph, seeing if I can edit it. Turning red with rage. Oh, I'm taking a breath. What do I need to separate it? A comma. It is a fronted adverbial. It's extra information. If I didn't have my fronted adverbial, would this sentence still make sense? He thrust his boot into Lucy's side so hard that it made her yelp. Yeah, it still makes sense, so I know that that's my fronted adverbial. He thrust his boot into Lucy's side. Oh, I've got the word Lucy's. Now, who owns the side? Lucy owns it. It's her side. So what do I need to separate to show that possession, that ownership? I need an apostrophe in between the Y and the S. Thrust his boot into Lucy's side so hard that it made her yelp. Edward wished he could move. All he wanted to do was help. I think that last sentence I could up-level it. Instead of help, I could maybe make it a bit stronger, a bit more powerful. So instead of help, maybe he wants to protect them. All he wanted to do was protect them. So instead of just help, now it's a bit more powerful. I'm sensing that longing to look after them and protect them. So the last thing I'd like you to do is go through, edit your paragraph, making sure that you fixed up your spelling, your punctuation, your grammar, and up-leveled any words or sentences that you think, oh, it's just a bit bland, I'd like to make it better. Okie dokie. So that is the end of our lesson for today. I hope you've enjoyed writing this paragraph, and tomorrow we'll be writing the final section of our chapter where Edward has to leave Bull and Lucy. Have a lovely day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.